Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Carlton.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblyman Flores.
Present.
Assemblyman Frierson. Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblywoman Martinez. Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles.
Here.
Chair Hadigi.
Here. If you would please mark the members absent as excused and mark them present when they arrive. I know that the members who are not present are currently presenting in another committee. Thank you for everyone tuning in and listening over the internet. Some quick housekeeping. I would remind members and presenters and anyone here in the audience to please silence all electronics. Everyone who is participating via Zoom, if you would please just keep your cameras on. That's the only way we can see that you are on with us on Zoom. And with that, I would say let's go ahead and get started with our agenda. I will be taking the items in order. And we can start with Senate Bill 122. So I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 122, which requires certain health and safety training for certain employees of cannabis establishments. Thank you so much, Senator, and your co-presenter as well, Ms. Ferraro. Thank you for joining us. And when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commerce and Labor Committee. My name is Senator Chris Brooks from Senate District 3 in Clark County, and today I'm here to present Senate Bill 122. Senate Bill 122 will require a cannabis business to have employees complete the 10-hour OSHA course and supervisors to complete the 30-hour OSHA course within 1 year of employment to ensure that employees and supervisors are familiar with common job-related safety and health standards. In Nevada, the cannabis industry includes retail workers who handle cannabis products, workers who work in and around heavy machinery, in the manufacturing and cultivation of cannabis products, and workers in testing laboratories that are exposed to cannabis byproducts and chemicals. This bill will bring worker protections for those workers up to date with other industries in Nevada. That is why I've introduced this bill. And if it pleases the committee, I would like to hand it off to Jessica Ferraro from Crowley and Ferraro Public Affairs to explain the importance and some of the more the pieces of the bill.
Thank you, Ms. Ferraro. When you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jessica Ferraro with Crowley and Ferraro Public Affairs, here today on behalf of the United Food and Commercial Workers to help present SB 122. As Senator Brooks mentioned, SB 122 will require OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 training for employees of the cannabis industry. The goal of this bill is to familiarize employees and supervisors with common job-related safety and health standards. Hazards within the industry include heat exposure, pesticide exposure, field sanitation issues, carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide exposure, handling of equipment that rotates, cuts, and pinches, and exposure to flammable chemicals. Providing this training will increase workplace safety for the industry as a whole. I'll now take a minute to walk you through the bill. Existing law requires certain employees performing work on construction sites, certain sites related to the entertainment industry, and sites where exhibitions, conventions, or trade shows occur to complete OSHA 10 and OSHA 30. This bill enacts similar requirements for employees of the cannabis establishments. Section 2 through 7 provide necessary definitions of the bill. Section 9 allows the division to establish a registry. Section 10 requires the OSHA trainers to identify their approved card at the location of the training. Section 11 requires an employee to complete an OSHA 10 class and a supervisory employee to complete an OSHA 30 class within 1 year of employment. In addition, this section specifies that the cost of the training will be paid for by the employer. Section 12 states that employees who do not complete the course within 1 year will be suspended or terminated by the employer. Section 13 outlines the fine structure for non-compliance of the cannabis establishment. And Section 16 requires cannabis employees hired before July 1st of 2021 to complete courses by July 1st of 2022. This bill will provide a standard of safety to the cannabis industry and bring worker safety up to date with other industries in the state. Thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator and Ms. Farado. Senator, is there anyone else giving remarks, or can we go to questions?
No, please just go to questions. It's just us.
Okay, perfect. Committee members, questions for our presenters? I'm going to start with our Vice Chair Carlton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I won't say anything about the attire that's at the presentation today. We'll just let that go. Good thing I'm not the former chair of Senate Commerce and Labor. And we were both there, Senator Brooks, so we know. I'm just curious why the 1 year was picked. I know in the hospitality industry, I need to have my sheriff's card, my TAMS card, my health card, all those things. Thank God I don't have to have an OSHA card, but we may want to talk about that in the future. But gaming, don't come unglued, okay? But how did you pick 1 year?
If I could, Madam Vice Chair, if I could send that over to Jessica Farado to answer that for me.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. For the record, Jessica Farado, on behalf of USCW. I agree. I think that there's a much tighter time frame for other industries. There was in the Senate some concerns from industry on timing on getting the certification up and running because this is new. So we adjusted for a year. Thank you.
And if I may, Madam Chair, so it's a newer program, so you need time to get the training up and going so that you can get folks trained. After that, will they be required to actually get the card in a sooner time frame afterwards, or is this 1 year going to be, is this transitional? Is this your bridge, or is the 1 year going to be the same moving forward?
I mean, it would be my intention that as the industry, which is a relatively new industry in and of itself, gets used to the standard of having OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 for their workforce, like other industries currently do, that if it made sense, we could shorten that time period. But for now, I think that we have such a new industry, and this is a new standard, that this will give them the chances to really adapt and acclimate to this new standard.
Thank you, and I had never realized all the equipment that was involved, and when you start thinking about all that equipment, there could be some harm if you're not careful in what you're doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will now go to Assemblymember Tolles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I know this includes cannabis establishments. This includes, presumably the ones working with growing as well as in retail. On the retail side, I know there were some questions around having the retail, counter folks, people working behind the counter going through this training. And so trying to find an analogy, do we also have other similar industries that would have that kind of training, like, for example, at a grocery store or a liquor store or in the pharmacy even, so that I can just get an idea of if that's just standard?
Well, I'll answer the first part of that, and then I'll see if Ms. Farado has any follow-up. But there's a lot of vertical integration in the marijuana and cannabis industry space, and we're seeing more and more consolidation and more vertical integration, where you might be working in a cultivation facility, or you might end up be working in the same worker working in a retail environment. And so this industry is unique in that way. And so that really is why we feel that all the workers in the workplace need to have the training so that they're protecting themselves as they transition back and forth, possibly from one job to the next.
And if I may add just a few things, Madam Chair, to the Assemblywoman Tolles, and even in a scenario where it's just the retail establishments, if they were to just stay in that facility, I can provide a list to the committee on all the exposures that they're being exposed to in the retail setting. Just as an example, obviously there's electrical use in these facilities, there's typical fire hazards. We do have health risks within these facilities because medical use of marijuana typically involves chronically ill patients that may have bandages, may have illnesses that they're coming in with. So PPE, protective equipment, is another thing. Industrial hygiene, exit routes, emergency action. We have people loading and unloading docks with materials, exit routes, equipment safety. All these areas, even in record keeping, right, if there's an injury on site, OSHA training will involve record keeping, which is important for the retail employees to know as well. So I can provide a full list to the committee on all the categories that OSHA covers that also apply to the retail employees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if available, any other comparable industries that also have that would be helpful. Thanks.
And I'm going to just jump in and ask a quick question as well, just piggybacking off what my vice chair asked about the not later than a year after an employee is hired. I'm assuming this is going to be retroactive too, and all the current employees will have to go and obtain their OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 as well, correct? Not just new hires going forward a year.
Ms. Ferraro, you want to answer that? Thank you.
Madam Chair, that's a great question. I assume if you're employed at a cannabis establishment, going forward, once this bill passes, they will have to get an OSHA certification card.
Okay, and they will have a year as well, because I know new employees will have a year,
Correct.
but anyone, once this bill passes, and I think the effective date is July 1st, so they will have until July 1st, 2022 to obtain their OSHA 10 or OSHA 30, current employees.
Jessica Ferraro, for the record, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Members, any other questions? Okay, Assembly Member Duran, and then we will go to Assembly Member Kasama.
Thank you for bringing this bill forward. Safety is very important, especially around this time of year. My question is, are they going to have to be recertified, or is there going to be an expiration on that cannabis, or that work card that you're going to be handing out?
Jessica Ferraro, for the record, Madam Chair, through you to the Assemblywoman. OSHA certification, the cards do not expire.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And presenters, you can feel free to go directly to the members. Assembly Member Kasama?
Thank you, Chair. Assemblywoman Kasama, Assembly District 2. Thank you for the presentation. Just for some background information, I'm just curious what brought the bill about. Was there an incident, or was there a group that felt that there's a lot of safety issues in this climate? Just curious kind of the background of how this came about.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Jessica Ferraro, for the record. We do have a lot of anecdotal stories about injuries in the workplace. I think from our standpoint, this is a very new industry coming into the marketplace, and everyone is training differently. They're still getting up and running. We're still in the process where all of this is taking place, and they're sort of settling into the marketplace. And so from our perspective, because this industry is unique, I've highlighted a lot of areas where there's risk, right? Exposure to chemicals, heat, others, that we feel like this is a unique industry and needs some basic level of training for all employees for protection.
Thank you.
And if I may follow up, Madam Chair, this, just like Ms. Ferraro just said, this is such a new industry, and there are a lot of folks getting into this industry, both from an operational management and employee standpoint, that don't have backgrounds necessarily in warehouse working, manufacturing, cultivation facilities, and so this industry, while we have all the other industries that OSHA covers, are so well established, and a lot of the folks that are in that have been doing it and been trained to be in that for so many years. This is so new that it's we see a lot of people who don't really even have a lot of experience with just kind of general workplace safety, and so it's very important that we, as it comes up off the ground, that we create a culture of safety and provide some safe working environments for those workers.
Thank you. Assembly Member O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since it is a new industry and has some unique components to it, would it be better for this, instead of being in statute, to give the authority to the Cannabis Control Board to actually define in regulation specific training designed specifically to the various areas of cannabis production, growing, I forget the different parts, retail, because as you keep saying, it's unique. And that's why I'm wondering if it would be better to do it that way in regulations from CCB.
Madam Chair, through you to Assemblyman O'Neill, the Cannabis Control Board could come up with entire training modules, their own sets of requirements. OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 are very general to the workplace, and so and we have OSHA. You have specific training that can be for all the different industries that currently have OSHA 10 and OSHA 30, in addition to the OSHA 10 and OSHA 30. But the OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 are kind of the foundation, but there's nothing that would keep the CCB from coming up with even more specific industry standards and safety standards. But this is the foundation, and it's something that's accepted, across the country, and there's a robust training materials and capacity out there right now.
May I follow up? Well, here's my confusion. If it's not required in such an agency such as your drugstores, who deal a lot with the same materials, sick individuals, drugs, et cetera, why, and some other retail organizations that have their other training, why now are we bringing it over here to cannabis? Usually I've seen this OSHA training required on construction sites more than in the retail business.
And Chair, if I may, and like I stated earlier, there's a lot of vertical integration where you have a retail worker who's also exposed to warehouse conditions with forklifts and fall protection, and who's also could be working in a cultivation facility, and then they have the manufacturing facilities that are associated with cultivation facilities as well. Extreme heats, extreme colds, chemical processes, heavy equipment. And it's quite actually a fascinating industry if you've ever had the opportunity to kind of walk through all stages of the industry. It's a part manufacturing, part warehousing, part agriculture, and then the final piece of it, which is really kind of the smallest piece of it, is the retail end of it. And you have a tremendous amount of vertical integration in that industry right now.
Thank you, Senator, for the information. Thank you, Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Members, any other questions? Assembly Member Dickman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe I don't quite fully understand this OSHA card, but once you have this training, if you've gotten it somewhere else, it would apply?
Assemblywoman Jessica Ferrato, for the record, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam
Yes, go ahead,
Chair, if I
Senator.
may, and currently, all construction workers out there, folks working in the entertainment industry that do stage work, the conventions in our state, all the workers on the conventions, all of those industries currently have OSHA 10, and their supervisors have OSHA 30, and they're transferable.
Okay, thank you, members. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to move us into the testimony part of the hearing. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to testify in support? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 122? If so, just raise your hand so I can call on you. Okay, broadcasting, could we check the telephone line for anyone wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 122?
To testify in support on Senate Bill 122, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 796, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, member of the committee. For the record, Rusty McAllister, RUSTYMCALLISTER, the Executive Secretary Treasurer with the Nevada State AFL-CIO, and we are in support of this legislation. We believe that it makes sense. The cards are required for other industries, the construction industry, the entertainment industry. This industry that we're talking about has dangers that are in it. It doesn't take long with a short look on Google to see recent explosions and fires that have occurred as a result of the processing of cannabis and hash oil. Most recently, there were 11 firefighters injured in Los Angeles when a factory extracting hash oil blew up. Just last October, 2 people were injured in a fire in Albuquerque, New Mexico, from a cannabis extraction plant. So there are hazards working with these chemicals, working with the processes to remove the cannabis from the hemp. And so for those reasons, Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are in support of this legislation. We believe it makes good sense to ensure worker safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 018. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Sullivan, JIMSULLIVAN, and I'm representing the Culinary Union. The Culinary Union supports SB 122 because all workers deserve to work in a safe and healthy environment, and proper training is the key to making this happen. Our health and safety training program has reduced injuries and saved lives in the hospitality industry, and we believe it will have the same positive effect in the cannabis industry. In addition, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that health and safety training is more important than ever for all workers. The Culinary Union urges the Nevada Legislature to support and pass SB 122. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 658. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Michael Giddings, MichaelGittings. I'm president of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 711. On behalf of the 6,800 members of the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 711, I am speaking in support of SB 122. This proposal requires employees in the cannabis industry to complete a specified health and safety course 1 year after being hired. UFCW members in Nevada work in grocery stores, retail establishments, chemical manufacturing, food processing plants, and the legal cannabis industry. UFCW members in the legal industry work in growing and cultivating facilities, manufacturing and processing facilities, and in laboratories and dispensaries. Wherever cannabis is legalized, the UFCW is committed to building a successful industry with a thriving, diverse, and skilled workforce. The UFCW represents tens of thousands of cannabis workers across multiple states. We know workers face many health and safety risks in the cannabis industry, including exposure to abnormal heat levels and chemicals, to repetitive stress injuries and other injuries on the job. Unfortunately, there is not much research on or data on what makes a cannabis workplace safe, because researchers are still reluctant to study this quasi-legal industry. But UFCW knows what works in other retail environments and has developed cannabis worker safety training. In 2019, after the passage of California CB 2799, UFCW coordinated the first ever OSHA safety training with cannabis workers in California. SB 122 would establish a work environment that recognizes the value of workers bring to this emerging industry while continuing to meet the demand of consumers with a safe and quality product. Thank you, and I urge you to pass SB 122 today.
Thank you, Mr. Giddings. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 122, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. And seeing that no one is here to testify in Carson City in opposition, we can go ahead and go to Zoom. Is there anyone wishing to testify in opposition? Please just raise your hand so I can call on you. Okay, seeing no one on Zoom. Broadcasting, can we check the telephone line, please?
To testify in opposition on Senate Bill 122, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. And we will now move into neutral testimony. Seeing no one here in Carson City, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to testify in the neutral position? Ms. Carry-On, when you're ready.
Morning, Madam Chair. Victoria Carrion for the record. I'm the administrator at the Division of Industrial Relations, and our office administers the OSHA 10 and 30-hour training. We're neutral on this bill. We're just available for any questions. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions for Ms. Carrion? Okay, thank you, Ms. Carrion. Broadcasting, if we could move to the telephone line.
To testify in neutral on Senate Bill 122, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to give closing remarks, Senator, or?
Thank you. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present this bill today, and it's wonderful to be back in front of this committee, and I'll wear a tie next time, I promise.
Thank you, Senator. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 122. For those who are here, I know at the beginning I mentioned that we were going in order of bills on the agenda, but seeing that we do have the Senate Majority Leader here, I am going to take her bill next. Okay. Majority Leader, when you're ready, you can come on down, and I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 293, which revises provisions relating to employment. Welcome, Majority Leader and Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nicole Canizaro, and I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley, and I am pleased to be here today to present to you Senate Bill 293, along with my colleague, Senator Dina Neal, which seeks to stop the practice of requesting the salary history from a potential employee. I also wanted to give my thanks to a member of this committee, Assemblywoman Duran, for her work on this same issue and her agreement to help to co-sponsor this bill and also to bring to light this, what I believe to be a very important issue. By way of background information, last session we did take a monumental step in Nevada by passing equal pay for equal work. However, it is still critical that we recognize the gender pay gap still exists in this country. I think some of you have maybe heard me mention this before because I also have found it so shocking and have shared this story a few times. But even my own mom, who worked as a waitress in many, many restaurants for many, many years, when she eventually made her way up to be one of the managers, one day received an extra check as a result of her employment. When she inquired as to why that extra check had been given to her, she had been advised that another woman who held a similar position had discovered that they were making less than their male counterparts and had asked for that to be addressed by the employer, which it eventually was after a lawsuit. And this is not a problem that does not exist any longer. This is not a story that I share about my mom that happened 30 years ago. This is a story that happened just a few short years ago. So for people who say that the gender pay gap no longer exists and that this is a problem of the past, I would challenge you and argue that that is absolutely incorrect. Current estimates mark that women on average make just 82 cents for every dollar a man earns. And today, in 2021, a woman still has to work a year and 3 months to earn the same amount of money that a male counterpart earns in that same year. A woman just starting her career will earn $406,760 less over a 40-year work life on average compared to a man. And for women of color, the inequity is even more pronounced. On average, a Black woman will earn $964,400 less over the course of her career than her male counterpart, while a Latina woman earns, on average, $1.1 million less than her male counterpart. This imbalance has been further exacerbated in the last year or two due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In the economic fallout from the pandemic, women have lost the majority of jobs. Many have been forced to drop out of the labor force altogether and are sadly disproportionately represented in the industries that are most devastated by the pandemic. While the passage of equal pay last session was a monumental step in addressing the gender pay gap, there is still work to be done in creating parity in pay for men and women. Requesting job applicants' salary histories has been a common practice for employers. Businesses often use previous salary information to calculate new hire compensation, a process that disproportionately has a negative impact on people of color and perpetuates the pay disparity between women and men. Employers' request for an applicant's salary history forces women and people of color to carry lower earnings and pay discrimination with them from job to job. And even if the employer is willing to pay an applicant significantly more than what he or she previously made, the negotiation process itself is likely to be affected by anchoring that applicant at his or her lower earnings. Even when factors like education, industry, age, race, region, and work experience are considered, the wage gap between men and women remains. Because women systemically are paid less than men, employers who rely on salary history to select job applicants and to set a new hire's pay will tend to perpetuate gender and race-based disparities in their workforce. Some employers claim they need to know the salary history of applicants to determine the market value of that particular applicant or the position. But salary is not a neutral or objective factor, and in fact, it often reflects the historical market forces which value the equal work of one sex over the other. Simply put, relying on salary history leads to depressed wages for women and for people of color. To address these inequities, 19 states and 21 localities have enacted bans on asking for previous salary information. I believe that these same provisions should be implemented into Nevada law. With your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to turn it over to my colleague and co-sponsor, Senator Dina Neal, so she can give remarks and speak to the necessity of Senate Bill 293.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and thank you, Assembly Commerce Committee on Labor. There have been so many times when I've asked myself, when and where do I enter, and when do women of color walk into the door with me? As early as the 1860s, Black women have fought for economic independence. Historically, the context has always been that they had no rights because they were Black, and then they additionally had no rights because they were women. The wealth gap of Black families and their experience can be traced to historic injustices such as slavery, segregation, redlining, and differentiating between areas of the city and town by race. The disparity in wealth spans generations and is perpetuated by unequal pay and diminished opportunities. The decreasing amount of resources that go to Black families have a direct correlation to the wage that they're paid. They can devote as much time to education and career advancement and never see a significant gain. I researched the gains and tried to get an understanding of the historical gains that have been going on. And when I looked at research done by Paula Giddings, she talked about how Black families in dual income in 1983, they made $26,686,000, and then in 1990 they made $39,601. Then when I looked at the data for 2018, Black families made $41,511. We're talking about 28 years later where we see pretty much a barely and small significant change. When I finished looking at that research and then I understood that we have serious segregation in wages, I remembered my mom and how she wanted to earn a higher wage. And so in order to do that as a dietitian, she chose entrepreneurship. She literally left working, created her own business just to try to claim a $25 an hour wage. And in 1984, that was significant for an African-American woman to go out and say, well, I can't get it through the job, through a wage, so I will go ahead and create my own business in order to obtain that. What I thought was interesting when I thought about her history was that in 2002, that's how much I earned. $25 an hour. And when you think that that's what she was claiming in 1983, 84, that's what her worth was. Why was I being positioned with the same thing? And it made me think about what is going on and what is happening in SB 293.
when we think about occupational segregation, Black women are more likely to work in lower paying service occupations along with Latino women, like food service, domestic work, healthcare assistants, and any other industry. They're less likely to work in a high paying engineering position or tech fields or managerial experience. The assumption is that the pay gap will close with the more education of Black women pursuing higher paying jobs. But according to Economic Policy Institute, Black women earn less than white women at every level of education, even when they work in the same occupation. And so when you consider that backdrop, right, and you consider what is going on in the space, you can only think that if you've already earned less, what kind of discrimination comes in play when you then have to put your prior salary in play to then seek a higher wage? I remember more often than not wanting to put my prior salary on an application because I wanted to earn more money. I was earning $36,000, taking care of 2 kids, but yet I wanted more money. And I was in fear that if they saw my prior wage, that they wouldn't give me the $45,000 that I was asking for. And so I think SB 293 matters, and it changes the perspective about what we need to do and how we need to encounter discrimination, because it is one of the footholds that will hold a family back and will hold women back, because the employer will see that wage and then say, well, if that's how much you earned, then that's probably how much you should continue to earn, and I maybe pay you $2,000 more or the same. And so I wanted to put those comments on the record, number one, because I know Assemblywoman Duran had this bill, AB 124, and she had this hearing in the committee. And I want to thank Majority Leader for asking me to come in, and Assemblywoman Duran for actually bringing up this issue and trying to make an impact in this wage disparity and trying to prevent discrimination for existing pay that you may have to put on your application, and preventing an employer from using that against you so that we can obtain wealth as women of color. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Majority Leader and Senator. Majority Leader, are there any other co-presenters?
No, Madam Chair, but if you like, I would be happy to walk the committee through the sections of the bill. And I did want to just take a moment to thank Senator Neal for being here and talking about the historical inequities and the very real life impact that the bargaining process has on women, and especially women of color, and their ability to negotiate higher wages and to help to lessen that wage gap. Members of the committee, to talk through just some of the pieces of Senate Bill 293, I'll begin by talking over some of those more substantive portions. So sections 1.3 and 9 through 12 prohibit certain private and public employers from inquiring about an applicant's wage or salary history, relying on the wage or salary history to determine whether to offer employment or the rate of pay for the applicant, or refusing to interview, hire, promote, or employ an applicant, or discriminate or retaliate against an applicant if the applicant does not provide wage or salary history. However, employers are required to disclose the salary range or wage rate to an applicant under certain circumstances. Section 1.3 makes it unlawful employment practice if an employer violates any of these provisions. A person who believes that he or she has been injured by an unlawful employment practice relating to an employer's inquiry of wage or salary history may file a complaint with the Labor Commissioner. Further, an employer, employment agency, or any agent or representative thereof that is found to have violated the provisions of this bill may be subject to an administrative penalty of not more than $5,000 for each violation. The Labor Commissioner may also recover any costs and attorney's fees incurred in investigating such violations. In addition, Section 1.7 authorizes a person who believes he or she has been discriminated against to request a right to sue notice from the Labor Commissioner. Sections 3 and 5 provide that the provisions implemented by this bill do not apply to employment outside of this state, religious organizations, nonprofit organizations, and to certain businesses or enterprises on or near an Indian reservation. Finally, Section 8 authorizes a court to award the person the same legal or equitable relief that may be awarded to a person pursuant to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 if the employee is protected under the provisions of Title VII or certain provisions of existing state law. And Madam Chair, the one other thing I did want to highlight for the committee is that there is some preliminary research that talks about the effects of salary bans in states and municipalities where they have enacted this type of legislation and ordinances. And in a recent study that was done by Boston University's School of Law that looked into this, what they found was, and what I think Senator Neal did a very good job of highlighting, is that when you take into account all of the reasons that pay equity is still a challenge for us, one of the most significant factors is the salary bargaining process. And when you take into account other things, that is the most influential factor. And so when women are tied to their prior salaries, that really does have an effect on their ability to earn more over time, and it prohibits us from really closing that wage gap. And with the enactment of legislation, just like Senate Bill 293, what they are seeing is that there are increases in the amounts that women are earning and also that people of color are earning when we do ban this type of information from anchoring people to their former salaries. And so I did want to just highlight that there is some preliminary research that shows this is actually a piece of legislation that does work and helps us to address that wage gap. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Thank you. Members, questions for our presenters? We'll start with Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for the presentation. My question has to do with Section 1.32A. So it has here, who has completed an interview for a position, the wage or salary range or rate for the position. Let's say I'm interviewing 5 people and I decide, based on my interviews with those people, that I'm just going to offer it to applicant 1 and 2. It seems to me, looking at this, that even if I've decided during the interview this is not something that's going to be a good fit, why do I have to disclose the salary? It seems to me if there's an offer of employment, it seems to me the wording should be an offer of employment, then you have to disclose the salary range.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman, through you, Madam Chair, to you, Assemblywoman. In Section 1.3, what subsection 2 is seeking to do is to ensure that the employer or the employment agency, whichever applies, is actually giving the information on their part to the applicant or to the interviewee, so that we're not put in a position where that becomes something that the applicant is either feels compelled to disclose or is somehow influenced to disclose. And so that's why that is worded that way, is so that when we're talking about salaries and wages, that the interviewee and the prospective employee in the course of those conversations is getting that information from the employer rather than the employee feeling compelled, or the prospective employee or interviewee feeling compelled to give that information, because that is really, I think, the crux of when we talk about a salary ban. You can say, well, we're not going to allow for an employer to base a salary or a wage that they're going to pay that prospective employee on whatever they may have been making at a prior employment. But when that information...
I understand that. It's not based on prior employment. I understand that, but it seems to me that I have to, whoever I interview, I have to tell them what the salary range is versus the person that I offer the job to.
And thank you, Assemblywoman. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. For the record. So the reason why it is phrased like that, and that you would provide it to anyone who is interviewing or potential employee, is so that that information is not being compelled by the employee or the interviewee to be disclosed by them. And so even though that might not be somebody that you would be offering the position to, it, in the salary negotiation process, is less compelling for that individual to feel as though they have to disclose that type of information, which then could be used by an employer to set that salary or wage range. And so it's encouraging on the employer side to both come up with that based upon that particular position or what that applicant may bring to the table, and on the prospective employee side is prohibiting them from feeling compelled to disclose that information. That's why it applies to everyone, even if you weren't going to offer them that particular employment. And I guess from my perspective, the harm in disclosing what somebody might make at a job is the same as if you were interviewing someone and talking to them about their everyday job duties or who they might report to. Even if they don't get that job, it's really about talking to them about what that particular position would entail.
Thank you. Okay, next we will go to Assemblymember Hardy. And Majority Leader, please feel free to go directly to the members.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for being here and bringing this bill. So I just want to make sure that I understand. So, my family and I, we filled out lots of applications over the years. Some of those applications will say, what was your starting wage at the job? What was it when you left? Those kinds of things. So, say on applications, they couldn't have those types of information on an application.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hardy. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. That's correct. We're trying to prohibit from that information from being part of the interviewing and salary or wage negotiation process.
Follow-up, Assemblymember?
Thank you. Okay, and then I think you mentioned this, but I just wanted to make sure that doesn't prohibit, an employer from asking an applicant what they expect to make or would like to make. That would still be okay?
Yes, thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Hardy. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. Yes, in Section 1.3, subsection 3, it specifically delineates that you may ask and discuss with a potential employee what their expectation is. And I think that is part of when we talk about the salary negotiation process and the inequities that exist there. An applicant coming in and saying, I would expect to make in this particular position X amount of dollars or this amount per hour, that is really enabling on the applicant side, but wouldn't fall into a situation where an employer you can make that decision about whether that's reasonable or not based upon credentials and what the position entails, but isn't the same type of information as this is what I made at a previous position.
Thank you. So now I just have like a little scenario that may happen. So let's say as an employer, I would have someone come in and we're interviewing and I say, okay, well, this is what we start people out at, like it's $10 an hour. And what if the applicant says, oh, well, I worked at a similar business and I made 11. What if they say that? I wouldn't want an employer to get in trouble for discussing. What if someone brings that up, what they made before?
Sure, and thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. And that is actually a great point that has come up in the context of the conversations around this bill. And I think one of the hard parts is how do you define if we put in language talking about the voluntariness of that disclosure of information. And so this bill doesn't necessarily address where if somebody is offering that because in response to this is how much we pay, certainly we still want the salary negotiation process to occur. But what we don't want is for an employer to be asking for that information or to be getting it up front such that may influence what they would pay that particular applicant. And so that is not something that would be prohibited by this bill.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Because like I said, we wouldn't want employers being penalized or that applicant going to the Labor Commission and if it was, brought up in that situation, like you said. So thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Senator, I think I know the answer. I'm hoping I know the answer, but just for the record, how about if I'm applying for a federal job or a job out of state where they do require that? I'm here in Nevada. I would still have to submit that information on those in that two scenarios, wouldn't I? I'm not exempt.
Thank you, Assemblyman, for the question. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. I would, of course, defer to legal counsel, who's probably a little bit more adept than I, but my estimation would be that if it's a federal job or if it's something out of state, that the Nevada revised statutes as they exist here would not apply because either there's a federal statute that takes precedence, or if it's for a job out of state, we don't have control over, obviously, what happens out of state.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to get that clarified because some people, they're still in Nevada and subject to Nevada statute, could misunderstand that. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, before we go to testimony, I just want to jump in. It's not a question, it's just a comment, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you, Majority Leader, and to Assemblywoman Duran, who had brought this bill forward, and also Senator Neal, who gave testimony identifying why this is so important. I think most people know that it takes, like you mentioned, women sometimes 3 months into the year to earn what their male counterparts would earn, but for Hispanic women, we won't earn that until October 21 of 21. So it'll take us 10 months to earn what our male counterparts earned the year before. So thank you. With that, we will move to testimony in support of Senate Bill 293. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give testimony in support? Seeing none, we will move to Zoom. Is there anyone in Zoom? If you would just raise your hand so I could call on you. Okay, broadcasting, could we check the telephone line for anyone wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 293?
To testify in support on Senate Bill 293, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 199, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tess Opferman, that's spelled O-P-F-E-R-M-A-N, speaking on behalf of the Nevada Women's Lobby. I want to express my personal appreciation to Senators Canizaro and Senator Neal for bringing forward such a reasonable and necessary bill. As a woman working to move forward in my career, I don't want my salary history to determine my future salary. It is unfair and continues to contribute to pay inequality for women. My experience, my qualifications, my references, and interview are all appropriate ways to determine whether I'm capable of performing a job and the pay I should receive. Asking what salary I expect or need is another appropriate way to decide my pay rate. Asking about prior salary is not. Asking about my salary history is one of the many ways that our employment system continues to contribute to pay inequality. On behalf of myself and on behalf of the Nevada Women's Lobby, I urge you to support SB 293 and pass policies that can help break systems that maintain inequality. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Offerman. I'm broadcasting. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 139, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Howdicke and committee members and Majority Leader Canizaro and Senator Neal. Misty Grimmer, Grimmer, with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada Resort Association. We are happy to come before the committee in support of SB 293. The gaming resort industry enjoys an amazingly diverse workforce, and we know our workers are the key to our guests having the best possible experience. SB 293 is an important bill to help ensure that discrimination a worker may have suffered at some point in their career doesn't follow them and compound into huge income losses over the course of their careers. Thank you very much, committee.
Thank you, Ms. Grimmer. Broadcasting. Next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 656, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Chairwoman and members of the committee. For the record, Will Pregman, representing Battleborn Progress, WILLP like Peter, REGMAN. We're rising in support of SB 293. This is a good bill for both pay equity and workers' rights. Past employment salaries should not be used as justification to pay anyone less for the same amount of work. It also empowers workers to take action if they feel they've been discriminated against on the basis of their past salary in the hiring process. Data consistently shows that women, particularly women of color, are paid cents on the dollar compared to their white and male counterparts. This bill is one way to address the disparity in pay for the same work. Thank you, Majority Leader Canizaro and Senator Neal, for sponsoring this, and we urge the committee to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pregam, for your testimony. Broadcasting. Next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 293, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will now move into testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 293. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none. I don't see anyone signed in on Zoom to testify in opposition. Can we please go to the telephone lines?
To testify in opposition of Senate Bill 293, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in the neutral position to Senate Bill 293? Welcome, Mr. Muradkin, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moradkin, Moradkhan, with the Vegas Chamber. I'd like to thank the Senate Majority Leader for her discussions and meetings with the Chamber regarding SB 293 and the efforts of Senator Neal and Assemblywoman Duran. In regards to the bill, the Chamber is neutral on the latest version that was presented to you. The Chamber supports the principle that there should be equal pay between employees for equal work regardless of gender. We believe SB 293 will codify the Ninth Circuit Court ruling of Rizzo versus Iovino in 2020 as it relates to wage history. That court case, to our understanding, directs that employers would not be able to ask about wage history from prospective employees as part of the application process. SB 293 will align state law with that ruling. This bill is well balanced for both employees and employers with a clear intent of what it's trying to achieve. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Muradkin. Is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to testify in the neutral position? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom? Okay, seeing none, broadcasting, can we please check the telephone line?
To testify in neutral on Senate Bill 293, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. Majority Leader, would you like to give closing remarks? Okay, with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 293. Oh, yes, we do have a comment from Assemblymember Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Canizaro, Majority Leader, can I be amended into co-sponsor the bill? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 293. Next item on our agenda is Senate Bill 209. I believe we have Senator Donata here to present. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 209, which revises provisions relating to employment. When you're ready, Senator, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Howdigi, and good afternoon to the members of the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. For the record, my name is Fabian Doñate, and I represent Senate District 10. I come before you all today to speak on Senate Bill 209, which would allow employees the opportunity to gain leave for their COVID-19 vaccine. As many of you know, my background stems in the field of public health, and when I was in the early process of determining what legislative bills I wanted to bring forward, I knew that I had to make some sort of change to how this pandemic was being handled. Today, I want to speak to you about the lessons that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and my strategy to get vaccines mobilized to the communities that need it the most. And I'll quickly go over some of the background on this legislation and some of the things that have been passed before and the limitations that we have seen because of this pandemic and how we can fix this moving forward. SB 209 is an act that relates to employment, and it requires the employer in the private sector to allow their employees to take paid leave for their COVID-19 vaccine. 4 hours will be allocated to each employee for this process, which will give them about 2 hours for each segment of paid leave to get the vaccine. Additionally, SB 209 requires the Interim Committee on Healthcare to conduct a study regarding the long-term implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. In past legislation, it has been documented that Nevada workers deserve access to paid leave. Legislators paved the way for this moment back in 2019 by passing SB 312, which would require that private employers with 50 or more employees in Nevada to provide each employee with at least 40 hours of paid leave. This provision changed some of the reporting and documentation requirements for employers, and it allowed private employees with the opportunity to gain 5 days of paid leave from their responsibilities. There is not much differentiation for what this paid leave can be used for, but it moved the needle on the conversation of worker protections. Of course, as we have seen from this pandemic, there is a limitation with the enumeration of paid leave days that is earned by employees and how that impacts workers who live paycheck to paycheck. For instance, CDC requirements established for COVID-19 inform us that patients who test positive for this virus at minimum should quarantine for at least 10 days. But if you do not have the means to quarantine or to stop working temporarily, it reduces our strategy to limit disease transmission. And when you are living in a situation that forces you to choose between your own health or working endless hours to provide a roof over your head, it's easy to assume why some workers might be inclined to underreport their prevailing symptoms. And in this case, not having the means to pay your bills might jeopardize the health and safety of your coworkers simply by the absence of paid leave to prioritize your own well-being. Some major employers have responded differently to how they approach a worker who has tested positive for COVID-19, and in fact, many of them do provide paid leave for an employee's quarantine absence, but we must recognize that not all employers have the same internal regulations and that differences do occur between some workers and others. This applies the same way that we approach with PPE gear and protections that were established and the disparities that came forward with that. We can see this easily between the protections granted to my father, who is a casino worker, and those protections not given to my mother as a grocery store worker. Therefore, this is why this is a public health issue, that we must recognize that vaccine distribution is about racial justice. Communities of color are more likely to work on the front lines of this pandemic, making them more susceptible to this illness. And to establish the right conversation on getting vaccines to all individuals, we need to recognize that disparities like this exist between occupations that have access to this luxury and those who do not. Since the last time that I presented this bill in the Senate, there have been a few additional updates to this legislation, and I want to quickly go over some of the efforts that have been provided by the Biden administration. Recently, the Biden administration announced a few guidelines to help provide a tax credit to fully offset the cost for small businesses and nonprofits who provide paid leave for the employees to get vaccinated, and this tax credit applies to businesses and nonprofits with fewer than 500 employees, and it covers up to 80 hours of work, which is equivalent to about $511 per day of paid sick leave, and it only applies to the leave that is offered between April 1st and September 30th of this year. Additionally, this tax credit is allocated for employees to receive the COVID-19 vaccine and the time needed to recover from any post-vaccine symptoms. When community members ask me about my perception of how this pandemic has played out and how Nevada has responded, I try to maintain my optimism while recognizing that our state has done poorly to invest in this field. Nevada's poor public health system is not a new topic. In fact, my professors and colleagues have attested to this for years. And I would even argue that a system collapse was inevitable. And that is exactly what we have seen through this pandemic. For me, I have always grown up in a state that has done poorly regarding health and education. And as a young teenager, I always distinctly remember Nevada always ranking last in any study or outcome. And even to this day, Nevada continues to rank lowest among other states in public health policies and regulations. And when we talk about COVID-19 and how our state has responded, we have to address our weaknesses head on. And that means acknowledging that our state has done a terrible job to prioritize public health. There have been some discussions as to how public health professionals around the country respond to the biggest lessons that we've learned from this pandemic so far, and these are just some of a few. We know the consequences that arise whenever a government system disinvests or takes away funding from public health, and a lack of public health infrastructure limits our ability to support an emergency response. And similarly, we've seen the correlation between educational gaps and health literacy to not understand directions given to you regarding the health of all individuals. For instance, not wearing a mask over your nose is an example of poor health literacy. And finally, communities of color are most hard hit populations across the entire country when it comes to healthcare outcomes. When we talk about COVID-19 distribution, since I know that's something that's fairly interesting to all of us, we already know that the limitations already exist within our own communities. And, this is a characteristic count that was provided by Southern Nevada Health District on April 21st. And it's not surprising to me how poorly we've done to reach out to those who are most vulnerable, like our Black and Latino workers. And of course, we love color maps. And in fact, we see this play easily with the vaccine distribution by zip code and how areas like Summerlin and Henderson do really well, but areas like East Las Vegas and North Las Vegas suburbs are trailing behind where most minority populations reside. COVID-19 showed us the limitations and consequences of an underfunded statewide public health system, but it also allowed us to visualize the opportunities that lie ahead for us. And to move beyond this pandemic, we must analyze and assess the public health frameworks that have been set in place for an emergency, whether it's responding to the pandemic or even like an event similar to the Route 91 Harvest Festival. We need to support public health across all levels and stages, and that means supporting epidemiological surveillance to prevent the outbreak of disease, investing in public health programs, mobilizing marginalized communities to get vaccinated, and passing policies like SB 209 that can get us to having this never happening ever again. I have worked with stakeholders across the board to get this bill to a good spot, and it accurately reflects the thoughts of everyone to push this bill forward. And many of the additions that we are making today will be temporary, with the hope that we can return in 2023 to address some of the public health response mechanisms. Also, I want to mention that there is one small change that is going to be reflected as an additional amendment to this bill, and that is to delete Section 1, subsection 11, which was an error that was made in the Senate with regard to some of the exemptions that were outlined for this policy. If you'd like, I can go over section by section, but the main thing that I wanted to mention is that Nevada has a long way ahead to fix the gaps that we've observed, and we can start by making sure that everyone has access to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. And with that, Chair, I am ready to answer any of your questions from the committee members on the bill language and the proposed amendment.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to questions. Members, do you have any questions for Senator Donate? Okay, last call for questions. Okay, well, I'm seeing none. We are going to go ahead and move into the testimony portion of the bill. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 209? Okay, is there anyone on Zoom? Just raise your hand if you're here for Senate Bill 209. Okay, broadcasting, if we could go to the telephone line and check for those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 209.
To testify in support on Senate Bill 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 018, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Sullivan, JIMSULLIVAN, and I'm representing the Culinary Union. The Culinary Union supports Senate Bill 209 because it expands the type of activities and reasons for employees to request paid time off, including time off for vaccinations. Providing workers paid leave to get the COVID-19 vaccine would create safer and healthier workplaces and get more hospitality workers back to work. In addition, requiring the Legislative Committee on Healthcare to conduct a study regarding the long-term health implications of COVID-19 on casino and hospitality workers is necessary at a time when the long-term effects of COVID-19 are still unknown. This study would allow the Culinary Union to identify the future healthcare needs of Culinary Union members and their immediate family who have contracted COVID-19. The Culinary Union urges the Nevada Legislature to support and pass Senate Bill 209. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 656, please solely state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, good afternoon again. Will Pregman with Battleborn Progress for the record, WILLPREGMAN. Ditto to the previous speaker, and simply add that as part of our recovery, we need to make sure that as many people in Nevada get vaccinated as possible. We workers need paid time off in general just to care for themselves and their loved ones when they are sick. This bill, at the very least, helps workers get vaccinated so they will be at far lower risk of contracting or spreading COVID-19. The more folks get vaccinated, the better protected our most vulnerable communities are, and the faster Nevada can get back on its feet. Thank you, Senator Dunyate, for bringing this forward, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prigman. On broadcasting, next caller, please.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify on support of Senate Bill 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you, broadcasting. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone on Zoom? Okay, broadcasting, can we check the telephone line for anyone wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 209?
To testify in opposition on Senate Bill 209, please press star 9 now. Caller with the last three digits of 407, please solely state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Howdigee, members of the Assembly Commerce Committee. This is Randy Thompson, State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business. On behalf of over 1,900 small businesses across Nevada, I am speaking in opposition to SB 209, not because I don't like the goal of it, but because of the extra burden of 4 additional hours of paid leave on top of the 40 hours that are already mandated by state law. If you think about it as a business, that is a minimum of 200 hours of lost revenue or 200 hours of lost productivity for a business. Nevada has lost almost 30% of its small businesses this past year. Of those that are open, about 40% of them are struggling to stay open, and about 42% of businesses who want to expand can't get people back to work. We all agree a healthy business starts with healthy employees, and employees are the most valuable asset to a business owner. Businesses don't operate without employees. Business owners do all they can to ensure the employees are safe and happy, and that often means giving them time off to get a vaccine, care for a sick child or parent, take their pet to the vet, or watch their kid's soccer game. While I support the goal of the legislation to encourage employees to get vaccinated, I object to the additional 4 hours of paid leave on top of what is this session already seeing several mandates being put on small businesses that will continue to be more of a burden to our struggling businesses. Thank you.
Thank Ms. Thompson. We do have a question for you from the committee, so if you would just stay on the line, please. Vice Chair Carlton?
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I may be misreading this, but this bill seems to apply to employers who have 50 or more employees. So, Ms. Thompson, are you speaking about those? Or because it seems like small employers are exempt from this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, Ms. Carlton. Yes, this is for 50 or more, but I'm going to tell you about half of NFIB members have 50 or more employees. And I can think of 3 that have already told me the burden this would put, even though they have 70, 85, and 120 employees.
Okay, well, then I think we just need to be careful about what we categorize as small employees, because you gave the impression you were advocating for small employers, but anything over 50 technically is not a small employer in this state. So I just wanted to make sure that the record was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, broadcasting, can we move on to the next caller, please?
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in Carson City who wishes to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 209? Thank you, Mr. Muradkin. When you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Muradkin, Moradkhan, with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is neutral on the revised version of SB 209 that you see in front of you today. I would like to thank the bill sponsor for meeting with the Chamber on several occasions about this bill. Those conversations have been very productive in helping clarify the intent of the bill and the logistical components as you see proposed. We believe this bill is a good balance between employers and employees. As many of you know, the Vegas Chamber and its fellow chambers of commerce and trade associations across the state have worked diligently in supporting statewide and local COVID mitigation efforts over the past year. The Vegas Chamber has distributed tens of thousands of masks to frontline workers and employees. We have given out over 50,000 posters on social distancing for the workplace, and our members have spent millions of dollars on PPE for their employees. We are now aggressively pushing vaccine efforts with employers and employees throughout the state. Employers are educating employees about the benefits of getting the vaccine, debunking vaccine myths, arranging on-site vaccine clinics, and greater flexibility with scheduling for their employees. Again, I'd like to thank the bill sponsor for his engagement with the business community, and thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Broadcasting, I don't see anyone signed in to testify in the neutral position on Zoom. Can we check the telephone line?
To testify in neutral on Senate Bill 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 701, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and maybe. Caller with the last 3 digits of 701, please press star 6 to unmute.
Good afternoon, Chair Hadegui and members of the committee. For the record, this is Mindy Elliott, MENDYELLIOTT, representing the Reno-Sparks Chamber of Commerce. We'd like to thank Senator Donate for working closely with the chambers throughout the state as this bill has been amended. Mr. Muradkin has already mentioned many of the specifics that I was going to testify to, so I don't want to belabor the point. We just want to thank members of the committee for hearing this committee, and thank you for your time this afternoon on behalf of the Reno-Sparks Chamber.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 139, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Hadegui and committee members and Senator Donate. Misty Grimmer, GRIMMER, with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada Resort Association. We are here in neutral on SB 209 this afternoon. On the Senate side, we worked closely with Senator Donate, and he was quite open to our concerns with the original bill. With the changes he was willing to make, we were able to remove our initial concerns. The gaming resort industry has taken many measures throughout the pandemic to help employees, such as extensions of wages and insurance beyond the shutdown, and now through on-site vaccine clinics or time off to go get the vaccine. We are anxious to have our state fully open again and everyone safely back to work and providing the fantastic Nevada experience to our guests. Hopefully, SB 209 can help expedite that happening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grimmer. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you. And Mr. Donate, if you would please, for closing remarks, I do have a question for you from Vice Chair Carlton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to make sure that we did get something on the record. There's been a number of bills this session that have been giving guidance to our interim committees to do studies. And studies take money. And I think it's really more about the definition of the word study. And the senator can clarify for me, But it's my impression from the way I look at this, that this would be part of their current responsibilities, and that no extra funding would needed. This wouldn't be a study per se that on one of our outside studies, this would be within their normal jurisdiction and would not have an extra financial responsibility.
Thank you so much for that question, Assemblywoman Fabian Donate, for the record. Yeah, so the reason why we tasked this with the Legislative Committee on Healthcare to study this in their interim is for that exact reason. And as you know, at the end of the session, that's when the legislature as a whole comes together to decide what they want to study and look at. And that was a few of the concerns that was brought forward in the Senate. But the reason why it's written that way is because we do not want a delay of when this bill gets enacted. And if that's something that the leadership wants to move forward with in identifying or separating this as its own standing legislative study where they want to supply funding for that, I'm open to that conversation. I just did not want to delay this to where people can benefit it from the most.
Well, Senator, I think what you've gotten here is going to have a much easier path to success than making any changes. I just wanted to make sure as part of the record that there would be no extra dollars needed for that committee to get it done. And thank you. The only concern that I have is that this does apply to employers with only 50 or more people. But I understand we take one bite at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Donate. Did you want to give closing remarks or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so just thank you so much, Chair Howdy, and to the members, and of course to those who called in to testify on this bill. Just to quickly respond, I don't look at this bill as a loss of revenue. I see this as lives that are saved. And I think that's something that we have to carry with us as we move forward. Public health and business can work hand in hand together to address the concerns that we've seen with this pandemic, and we can have a profound impact to the future of how this state responds to that. I have just a quick sentence, a quick quote from a local Las Vegas resident, and her name was Yesenia Rebolledo, and she mentioned to me the following: como madre trabajadora, mi primera prioridad es el bienestar de mi familia. No puedo permitirme perder tiempo del trabajo, no puedo arriesgar mi bienestar y es de los que me preocupan, pero no tengo otra opción. Así que si no nos dan esto, podríamos asegurar un primer paso para priorizar mejor la salud de los empleados y de la empresa. And translated, that says, as a working mother, my first priority is the well-being of my family. I cannot afford to miss time from work. I cannot risk the well-being of myself and those I care for. Yeah, I have no other choice. I know if we are given this, we can ensure a first step to better prioritize the health of the employees and business. So once again, thank you for having me here, and I hope we can urge your support for this bill.
Thank you, Senator Donate. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 209. And Senator Donate, if you would, please leave a copy of that letter for our secretary so that she can just copy it and enter it into the minutes. Okay, our last bill on the agenda today is Senate Bill 327. We have Senator Neal here to present, so I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 327, which revises provisions relating to discriminatory practices. Welcome back to the Assembly on Commerce and Labor. This was your home for many sessions.
Yeah, I know. I miss you guys. Okay, so good afternoon, Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. I'm here to present SB 327, but I have co-presenters, which you see on the Zoom, Dr. Wendy Green, and I also have, I believe it's Miss Tori, and then I have a student who is getting on named Nakia Belzar. She will be discussing, she's super important because she's a part of the back provision in the bill, which I believe is like section 18, but I just want to give some really quick comments. SB 327 was pretty much created because of the Crown Act, which is passed in actually several states. And I was asked during the summer if I would carry this legislation, and I said yes. I had particular stories associated with it from my colleagues who know me. I wore braids. I think 2011, 2013. I think I skipped 2015. But I wore braids, and it was a point in time, and I wore them because it snows up here, and I thought it was the best way to keep my hair from being like this, which is wet every morning and suffering and dying from a cold. But I was told that braids were unprofessional and that I should probably not be wearing braids as a legislator, And that was, it hurt my feelings because I've been wearing braids for like a really, really long time. And to wear braids in the legislative building is actually a pretty bold move in general. And being that I think at the time, I was pretty much the only black female in the building on the assembly side, I really took it personal. So when I got the opportunity to bring this bill forward, I said, why not? Dev has a national campaign around this. And there are legal experts who have been participating in defending the bills, which is why we have Dr. Wendy Green there, who has testified on the Senate side. And so this bill matters. I didn't call it the Crown Act, but because it has some other provisions in here to deal with the glass ceiling. But overall, majority of the bill is about hair discrimination and the impact within work environment and then school environment. And so I want to turn this over to Dr. Wendy Green because she is the expert and she has done research all over this topic. And so, Dr. Wendy Green.
Dr. Green, when you're ready, welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor.
All right. Thank you so much. I am ready. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor for the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of SB 327. As Senator Neal has already mentioned, a piece of legislation that is near and dear to my heart, but also at the heart of my advocacy, scholarship, and public engagement. Again, I am a professor of law at Drexel University Thomas R. Klein School of Law, founder of the #FreeTheHair movement, and the author of a forthcoming book, #FreeTheHair, Locking Black Hair to Civil Rights Movements. As one of the nation's leading scholars, specializing in grooming codes discrimination, I serve as a legal expert in civil rights cases, challenging race-based natural hair discrimination in workplaces and schools, as well as a legal advisor and co-drafter of federal, state, and municipal level legislation like SB 327, and as well as legislation like the Federal Crown Act that Senator Neal mentioned. So in sum, I've devoted my professional career to activating legal reforms like this legislation while enhancing public awareness around the harms of unchecked discriminatory grooming policies. For example, policies that denigrate African descendants' natural hairstyles as distracting, extreme, excessive, unkempt, and unprofessional, or demeaning directives like a Black woman was subjected to when she was told by her store manager to remove her braids or lose her job, or in another, because they deemed them too ghetto, quote unquote ghetto, or like an Afro-Latina meteorologist who was told by a news watcher that she needed to change her naturally curly hair, similar to the hairstyle that Senator Neal is wearing today, to something not so inward, iggory looking. So informed by these and other racial stereotypes, grooming policies are often enforced to deprive African descendants employment, education, housing, and access to public accommodations. African descendant boys and men are required to cut off their hair in order to maintain a job opportunity for which they are qualified, receive a high school diploma that they have earned, and to even participate in sporting competitions in which they rightfully advanced. Similarly, when they don natural and protective hairstyles, like one that I am wearing today, African descendant women and girls are deprived employment, educational, and extracurricular opportunities, along with being subjected to heightened scrutiny, resulting in greater levels of discipline in schools as well as in workplaces. Notably, when it deals with Black women and girls, natural hair bands require them to either cut off their hair or to wear their hair straightened. The latter is usually achieved through toxic chemicals, extreme heat styling, wigs and weaves, which are expensive and time-consuming to maintain. It is also very common to suffer through chemical burns while chemical relaxants are being applied to our hair and scalp, which are not only excruciatingly painful, but also severely damaging. Black women and girls often endure hair breakage, balding, as well as scalp disorders due to chemical relaxers, as well as wigs, weaves, and extreme heat being applied to our hair. Research also indicates potential correlations between hair straightening products that Black women and girls commonly use and their increased chances of developing uterine fibroids, hormone-related infertility, and more aggressive forms of breast and uterine cancer. Therefore, natural hair bans leave African-descended women and girls in a precarious catch-22. Either don your natural hair at the risk of lawfully being deprived an employment or educational opportunity, or don straightened hair at the risk of enduring consequential harms to your psychological, physical, and physiological well-being. This harmful bind that many Black women and girls find themselves is lawful under federal jurisprudence due to what I call a hair-splitting legal distinction federal courts have created. Shortly after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was enacted, federal courts adopted what is known as the immutability doctrine, which limits the scope of legal protection against racial discrimination to discrimination on the basis of immutable racial characteristics, presumably like one's skin complexion. Applying this misguided doctrine, federal courts have repeatedly declared for now 40 years that when an employer denies an African descendant a job because she adorns an afro, the employer engages in unlawful race discrimination. However, the moment she twists, locks, or braids her afro and suffers adverse treatment on those grounds, the employer's discrimination is magically deemed lawful. It is no longer about race. SB 327 ensures that this unjustifiable gap in federal civil rights protection does not exist under Nevada state law. And in doing so, it redresses a pervasive form of racial discrimination that harkens back to the eras of racial slavery in this country, as well as racial apartheid, not only in this country, but abroad. Just as adorning a hijab is often an essential expression of many Muslim women's religious beliefs, for many African descendants, donning natural hairstyles is a critical feature of our racial identity or simply how our hair grows. This bill ensures clear protection of everyone's personhood by eliminating a common dilemma, being forced to choose between expressing a defining trait of one's racial identity or being deprived an educational opportunity, an equal educational opportunity, or employment for which they are qualified. I thank Senator Neal as well as Senator Harris for their leadership in advancing this important civil rights legislation that simply does not afford special treatment, but rather equal treatment for all who experience racial discrimination on the basis of characteristics that are associated with racial identity, such as our skin complexion, hair texture, hairstyle, our language, or accent. Committee members, I thank you again for the opportunity to present today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I strongly urge your support of SB 327, which provides effective statutory protection when these forms of racial discrimination occur in our workplaces and schools.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Senator Neal, did you want to go to Ms. Jacobus next?
Yes. If I think Nakia is on.
I don't believe so. I just see that we have the Nevada Equal Rights Commission on, Dr. Green, and Ms. Jacobus. Ms. Jacobus, correct? Is it, or is that Ms. Belzar?
No, So I thought Ms. Belzar came on, but you can have Ms. Jacobus go.
Okay, Ms. Jacobus, when you're ready.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Assembly Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Tori Jacobus. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm here to share my heartfelt support of Senate Bill 327. I'm an attorney and the head of the Office of Civil Rights in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My office worked successfully with our city council to pass similar protections in Albuquerque in early January of this year, and with the New Mexico Legislature to pass similar statewide protections during our 2021 legislative session. My office enforces all of our anti-discrimination laws in the city. And our work was initially modeled after the Crown Act, but we went beyond it to be more expansive and offer more protections to people in our community. I am also a Black woman and the mother of Black children. Myself and my children have all experienced the type of discrimination regarding our hair, the way that it naturally grows, and the styles that we choose. Adding these protections to Nevada law is a large step towards acknowledging and dismantling centuries of lawful discrimination on the basis of race related to the way that Black people's hair grows from their heads. Radical, unkempt, disheveled, extreme, unattractive, and unacceptable. Those are all words that have been used to describe the hair of Black people in the workplace, in schools, and in daily life. These judgments reflect centuries of privileging straighter hair because of its closer association with Eurocentrism or whiteness, and serve to denigrate natural hair texture, styles, curliness, or kinkiness because of its association with African descent or Blackness. As a result of these associations, Black women with textured hair are less likely to get job interviews than Black women with straightened hair or white women with straight or curly hair. Black children are more likely to be disciplined in school for their hairstyles that do not conform to societal norms. Conforming to this implied hair mandate results in increased financial impacts to Black women. Black women report spending 9 times more money on professional styling than white women. This implied hair mandate, conforming to the implied hair mandate, results in physical harm from toxic chemicals to straighten, damaging wigs and weaves, high levels of heat to straighten, permanent and temporary hair loss due to styling techniques. And the last piece of harm that I'm going to talk about is time. Black women have to undergo additional grooming time and also spend money, time, and energy to repair the harm that I previously stated. As Professor Green stated, federal law has not done a great job of clarifying that discrimination based on hair type, texture, and other characteristics closely linked to race are indeed race-based discrimination. Accepting Senate Bill 327 gives you an opportunity to provide a clarifying definition of race in order to guide schools and employers in appropriately and fully describing, preventing, and enforcing against unlawful race discrimination. I look forward to Nevada joining the other states and municipalities that have provided these protections to their community members. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobus. And I believe we do have Ms. Nakia Belzar on Zoom. There she is. Hi, Ms. Belzar, when you're ready. Thank you for joining us.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Ms. Belzar, could you get closer to the microphone?
I don't have a microphone. Am I too soft or?
Oh, perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so I will just begin. Good afternoon, everyone, the committee, and everyone else that is joining us here today. My name is Naika Belizaire, and I'm testifying in support of Senator Neal's SB 327 hair bill as a student in the Clark County School District and on behalf of Code Switch Restorative Justice for Girls of Color. I was first asked to present my story of my experience with hair discrimination in school, and I hope that my testimony will help persuade you all to support this bill. In the summer before my 8th grade, I took a huge step because after years of listening to society tell me that my curly hair was ugly or that it wasn't professional enough, I felt as if I wasn't enough. But on the summer before my 8th grade year, I decided to throw away all hair relaxers and straighteners and just go natural. I allowed myself to love my natural curls. So it was only right that I wore an afro on the first day of 8th grade at Hyde Park Middle School. I strutted through those school hallways proud of my afro, ready to present it to the world. But unfortunately, not everyone agreed that my hair should be out for the world to see. My world geography teacher at the time seemed to believe that my hair was a distraction. On the first day, I had sat in the back of the class. And please remember this fact. I was in the back of the class. No one was behind me, and I was known for being a good student, never talking when unnecessary and only answering questions when the teacher asked. So I was confused when the teacher asked me or called me to her desk and told me that I was being a distraction. When I asked what she had meant, she stated that it was in fact my hair that was being a distraction, that my hair was disrupting the classroom environment. Again, I was confused. What did my hair have to do with this? And while contemplating what I must have done wrong, my teacher handed me a slip that stated that I should be dress coded and suspended for insubordination. And I was scared. As I walked to my principal's office, I thought of the ways that this could impact my record, that this could make me have lesser chances at a brighter future. When I arrived to the front office and showed the secretary my slip, even she was confused. She asked if I was doing anything wrong with my hair during class, and I said no. I wasn't touching it, playing with it. I wasn't doing anything. So she told me to sit down and wait for the class to end because I didn't deserve to have an infraction on my record just because a teacher didn't like my hair. The next day, I knew that I couldn't ignore the teacher, so I went back to class and sat in the back again. But I watched as the teacher grew angry as I walked into the classroom. The second that class ended, I saw as she marched to the principal's office. And minutes later, the words, "Naika Belizaire, please come to the principal's office," rang throughout the school. When I got to the office, the principal told me that, fortunately, I wasn't being suspended. But from that moment on, I was prohibited from wearing an afro to school because it was too unprofessional. I was heartbroken. A day before that, I felt on top of the world, afro out and proud, but at that moment, I felt insignificant all over again. I didn't know at the time that I was being discriminated against, that I was one of the few Black students in the class, and I had never seen any other student get dress coded for their hair. I didn't know at the time that I had the right as a human being to wear my hair the way I chose to, just like everyone else. While it was saddening that I have to be in front of you all right now, pushing for the right to wear my hair in my school or at work without having backlash, I know that this is necessary. This is why I support this bill, because something as natural as my hair should not be seen as a distraction or unprofessional. I don't want any other young Black child, Black person, or any person with hair like mine to feel the way that I did, to have their pride stripped from them and instead be forced to feel insignificant and lesser than, just because our hair is a little different, or have to choose between expressing ourselves and having a clean record. Everyone's hair is beautiful and should be shown to the world, loud and proud. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Belizaire, for being such a young advocate and for being brave and sharing your story with us. We appreciate you being here. Senator Neal?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Howdigi. So with that, that was the extent of my presenters, and we will open ourselves up for questions.
Committee members, questions? I'm going to go to Assemblymember Flores first.
Thank you, Senator, for your presentation. And I just had a quick comment to our youngest co-presenter. I want to say thank you for your testimony today, and through your story, you're going to empower a whole bunch of other people. So thank you for being so strong and brave and putting your story out there. You're an inspiration. So thank you. No comment. Sorry, Madam Chair.
So much.
Members, questions for our presenters? Assembly Member Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I too just have a comment. I would like to say to all the ladies who participated on the panel, thank you for the explanation on some of the issues with when you were talking about your hair. It needs to come to light that we need to know that not everybody's the same. And with you explaining this to us, it teaches everybody that sometimes we take for granted how our hair is and not realizing that other people have challenges. And I really appreciate you coming here and explaining that to us because it educates us and it makes us better people. So thank you for that.
Members, any other questions? Okay, Senator Neal, I do have one. I just, as I read through the bill, I know that there was other parts of the bill that had to do with other issue areas. Could you kind of walk us through, for example, I know you'll see this repeated throughout other sections, but I see it starting on Section 7, which has to do with county testing or testing and...
Thank you for the question. And I do have an amendment on that section, but what you're seeing right now are the amendments that I made on the Senate side. So in Section 7 and Section 8, what I was attempting to do was I wanted to go after the glass ceiling that's in place. What I've encountered more often than not are promotion processes where an individual may test and they may have think or believe that they scored well, but there is not necessarily transparency in the testing process. And so the individual is trying to figure out how did they score. And so let's say there could be a listing that comes out that ranks them, and then they are found that they feel like they probably should have been higher on the list. And so the amendment to the bill was to not give them the correct answers, but to give them the incorrect answers that they had, and also to allow them to get their answers at the same time. So there is no question of whether or not their employer got it or their supervisor got it, but they're actually getting the information at the same time so that they have an opportunity to, number one, protest or deal with what they feel may be a discrepancy. I talked to the counties and the local governments on the Senate side, and the amendments that are represented, which I believe are showing up in Section 7, Sub 4, was that the rules felt like, this may or may not apply to them. So that provision, which doesn't apply to departments that have less than 200 employees, that removed their objections. And then I added language to strike out that because they were worried that I was going after some of their just regular testing practices, and I was only going after vertical promotions. So the insertion of the word vertical means that I only want the person who's trying to go from maybe assistant to deputy chief. And so I wanted to be able for them to know and be able to walk through the process. I talked extensively with employment testing companies to see what was going on in Nevada, and specifically in Las Vegas. And the average cost of third-party testing is about $10,000 a year. And that's super nominal for transparency. The max amount would be $25,000, and that is if you have like the super menu of like all of the accoutrements that would go with employment testing. But based on this and trying to get transparency for the levels within the testing process, the average cost is $10,000. I talked specifically to the employment testing agency who had contracts with several of the jurisdictions. Clark County was moving in this way anyway, and so they understood my motive and my position and why I wanted to try to get transparency and a way for a person to challenge if they felt they had been denied and there was a glass ceiling that was associated with their promotion forward. Additionally, I have an amendment from the city of Reno, because the city of Reno and their charter in particular have a provision where the testing practices or promotion practices are very different for the Civil Service Commission. And so this amendment should be on Nellis. I accepted this amendment yesterday, which is that the proposed conceptual amendment would amend Section 8, that if the city has a Civil Service Commission which appoints a chief examiner, and the chief examiner serves at the pleasure of the commission, and they are not answerable to any other officer or the body of the city other than the commission, and is not a human resource director, they are excluded from these provisions in the bill. Because City of Reno, their charter is very different in regards to civil service employees. As we know, you could be in civil service in other cities, or you could just be a regular employee. But the ability to move forward and move ahead sometimes is limited. And I was really trying to get at how could I do the most minimal thing, which is provide transparency and provide an ability for an employee to at least find out what their score is, rather than being told what their score is and they believe that it's been misrepresented. Because we would like to believe that the world is fair and that individuals are allowed to promote, but that is not the case. And I was looking for the low-hanging fruit to figure out how can I just at least get them enough information to question and challenge their score where they believe that they were the most qualified, but yet they were not allowed to promote. And that is what Section 7 and 8 does. And that's why I called the bill Hair Discrimination versus Crown Act, because I was looking for a way to deal with the glass ceiling and then also deal with hair discrimination in one bill. And so that is what those sections do.
Thank you, Senator Neal. I appreciate that. Okay, well, at this time, we can move into testimony and support. Seeing no one here in Carson City broadcasting and no one else signed in Zoom, can we check the telephone line for those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 327?
To testify in support on Senate Bill 327, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 643, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sonia Watson, SONYAWATSON. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, members of the committee. I'm testifying on behalf of the Las Vegas National Bar Association. I guess the first thing that I want to say is that I feel very, very strongly about this issue. I have natural hair. I stopped relaxing my hair some years ago, and it was a huge decision for me, and it wasn't one that I took lightly because I did fear discrimination, and I know that it does happen. So I believe strongly that it's my God-given right to wear my God-given hair the way it grows to my head. You know, everyone else gets to do that. But what I want to speak about today is protective styling. You may be wondering, you know, protection from what? What is protective styling? Protective styling is when you wear your hair in braids or in locks. And the reason that that's necessary is that because our hair is fragile, right? If you look at my hair is kinky, coily. And when I say coily, think of the spring in a pen. That's how tightly coiled it is. When I say kinky, think of a chevron pattern, you know, that zigzag pattern. And think of, you know, the tightest chevron pattern that you could possibly think of. Each bend, each kink is the potential for breakage. And so we wear our hair in these protective styles so that it does not break. There's this misconception that Black women especially can't grow long hair. But actually we can. It just requires protective styling. And that's the reason why a lot of us choose to wear our hair in these styles. You know, for us, sometimes growing long hair can be like a holy grail. It's like the search for Atlantis. It seems almost unattainable, but it can be done if we wear these protective styles. And so that's why it's so important. And also, you know, it's just important for us to be able to express ourselves through our hair. And I just wanted to get that across. And thank you very much for, you know, your time today. I won't belabor the point. I won't repeat a lot of what's been said because, you know, it was already said very well. So we just urge you to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 294, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the record, Callie Wilsey with the City of Reno. That's CALLIWIL, S as in Sam, EY. We are here in support of SB 327 with the conceptual amendment presented by the bill sponsor this afternoon. While we support the provisions throughout the bill, I specifically wanted to comment on Section 8 and the amendment. We appreciate Senator Neal working with us to understand the unique operations of the Reno Civil Service System and working with us on that amendment. The Reno Civil Service serves as an independent body that is responsible for all phases of selection, appointment, promotion, appeals, and transfer of employees in the civil service system. The Reno City Charter specifically requires that commission to appoint a chief examiner who serves at the pleasure of the commission. The chief examiner has a separate staff to carry out the functions of the civil service. This is separate from other HR duties. The rules adopted by that commission establish procedures for notification of exams, review of examination results, post-assessment counseling reviews, appeals of examinations, or testing procedures. We appreciate the Senator working with us to ensure this independent body that operates differently than most and that meets the goals of the bill sponsor can continue to provide this important service. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Hadigi. My name is Dallas Harris. I represent Senate District 11. I'm here to testify in support of this bill, I think for obvious reasons. I just want to tell you all a little quick story that I mentioned on the Senate side, and I think this highlights the importance of this bill. If you all may remember, during the special session, I had my hair braided. My godmother was kind enough to sit me down in the chair, as I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with. And was willing to braid my hair. And when I asked her, hey, do you mind braiding me up before I go out to session? The very first thing she asked me was, are you allowed to have your hair like that? And I thought to myself, if that's not a reason that we need the Crown Act, I don't know what is. It is a very familiar feeling if you are of a certain hair texture where you feel like in order to be perceived as professional, or as good enough, or if you want people to respect you, that you have to go through sometimes painstaking hours and hours of hair treatment in order to make what you feel is presentable, and that's often based on someone else's standards. I'm sure you'll hear, if you haven't already, some stories of women who almost around the same time, late 20s, 30s, decide that they just cannot sit through and put their hair through the chemical treatment anymore, and have made the bold decision to go natural. I think the important point here is that that shouldn't be such a bold decision. And so we want to make sure that here in Nevada, there is no kid who is getting kicked out of school simply because of their hairstyle. There is no woman who feels they need to straighten their hair for a hair interview, and then maybe they can go back to natural after they're outside of their probation period. These are very real things, and it's time that we do something to address that. So thank you all so much for your time. I'm actually in the middle of presenting one of my other bills downstairs, so I appreciate it. Thanks for squeezing me in. Have a great day.
Thank you, Senator. Okay. Broadcasting, if we could go to our next caller in support on the telephone line. Thank you.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify on support of Senate Bill 327, please press star 9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits of 656, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. We'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, good afternoon again. Will Pregman with Battleborn Progress for the record. WILLPREGMAN. We're in full support of ending hair discrimination in Nevada. This is a serious issue for BIPOC Nevadans who face discrimination with dress codes at work, school, or elsewhere. This is a good example of how to combat systemic racism, and otherwise I would ditto the previous speakers and thank Senators Harris and Neal for their work on bringing this bill forward and urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prigman. Broadcasting, next caller.
If you recently joined the call and would like to testify in support on Senate Bill 327, please press star 9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits of 240, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 240, please press star 6 to unmute.
I want to thank you for giving me time to speak in favor of SB 327. Again, my name is Nedra Cooper. I'm a life member of the NAACP, which is the oldest civil rights organization. I'm also a member of the Las Vegas Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, as I serve as the social action chair. You know, Delta Sigma Theta is a Greek organization that has been in existence since 1913. It was founded by 22 courageous women who, during their time, also marched as a woman suffragette for the right to women to vote. And we find ourselves again at a time when we are standing together to fight not only for women to vote or all to vote, but now we're talking about making sure that culturally, women who wear their hair culturally or African-American women who are wearing protective hairstyles are not discriminated against due to their choice of their hair. It's really unfortunate when a woman has to be told, an African-American woman has to be told
You need to become more Europeanized in order to be selected for this job. And once you have gotten this job and you have passed your probationary period, then you can be yourself, when all others are allowed to start as being themselves. We also know that 81% of African American women or women who wear their hair in their culturally natural hairstyles are more likely not to be selected for a job. We also understand that out of that number, we also have 1.5% of those women who are also have issues with employment or trying to be told that they need to look like someone else in order to either maintain their employment or in order to get their employment. I'm sure that it's probably priorly have been said that when you're talking in terms of it's emotionally damaging to women to be told that they cannot express themselves by their cultural or preventative hairstyle. You not only affect us financially, you affect us emotionally, and you also affect us emotionally. We also want to not only start there, but we want to make note that there are already 8 states who have passed such a bill as this one. I also understand that this bill may be coming to the House, to the Senate House, to also become a federal law. I hope that the Nevada jumps ahead and makes it our law before we have the feds have to tell us to make the law. It's also very difficult for our children who are going to school and they are told that they can't participate in sports because of their hairstyles, or they're told that they're out of dress code because of their hairstyle, not because they're not wearing the appropriate attire, but because of the way that they look. We know that a hair does not make a person, it's an expression of a person, and that we should not be judged neither by our hairstyles, just like we need to be judged by the content of our character. With that being said, I urge each and every one of you to support this bill, and I appreciate our Assembly, Deanna Neal, who courageously has brought this before you. I thank you for your time.
Thank
and
you,
I'm
Ms.
hoping that we use our title, Nevada being Nevada-born, and that we stand up for what we always have done, and that is we fight for the rights.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong, for your testimony. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, great. I see no one here in Carson City or on Zoom wishing to testify in opposition. Can we go to the telephone lines?
To testify in opposition on Senate Bill 327, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. User 1, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chuck Calloway, Director of Intergovernmental Services for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm in general support of what this bill is trying to accomplish, and I apologize sincerely to Senator Neal because this bill was not on my radar in the Senate, and it did not catch my attention, specifically Section 7 of the bill. However, earlier this morning I was contacted by our HR section, which had some concerns regarding Section 7. We believe that as it's written, if it does apply to our agency, it would eliminate our ability to administer our own promotional exams. As many of you know, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is the largest police department in the state, and the 11th largest police department in the country. We have over 5,000 employees, and we have a very robust HR section that oversees our promotional process. We follow the guidelines of federal law, in particular the Uniform Guidelines for Employee Selection and Procedures. We have these procedures codified in our civil service rules. We have a very detailed appeal process, and our process for promotions is very transparent. It is difficult to find outside entities that have that are subject matter experts in some of the areas related to promotion for law enforcement and public safety. And we are concerned that if we had to outsource these to a third party,
that it would be difficult for us to find subject matter experts that could meet our needs, and that also that it would potentially have a cost impact. I'm still looking into this, and I'm very happy to work with Senator Neal. I reached out to her just a little while ago via email, but I'm sure she has not seen my email because she's very busy. But I look forward to trying to work with her to address our concerns that I was just made aware of. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Callaway. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Caller with the last three digits of 196, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Eric Spratley, S-P-R-A-T-L-E-Y, the Executive Director of the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, here in opposition to Sections 7 and 8 of this bill. Ditto to what Director Callaway just said, and we were aware there were some amendments coming, or an amendment coming, that would address our concerns, but the one from the city of Reno doesn't cover the concerns of some of our membership, so we remain opposed, and we'll work with the senator as she sees fit to see if we can arrive at a consensus. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Seeing no one here to testify in the neutral position in Carson City, I will go to Zoom. I believe we have Ms. Kara Jenkins with the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. Ms. Jenkins, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kara Jenkins with the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. We are neutral on this bill, but we're here to provide any answers if the committee has questions about enforcement, but we're encouraged by this bill.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. Jenkins? Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Jenkins. Seeing none, if we could, broadcasting, please check the telephone line.
To testify in neutral on Senate Bill 327, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 863, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, my name is Vincent Guthrow. That's spelled V like Victor, I-N-S-O-N. Last name Guthrow, G-U-T-H-R-E-A-U. I serve as the Deputy Director of the Nevada Association of Counties. NACO just wanted to go on record and thank the sponsor for her willingness to work with counties on this bill, specifically on Section 7 of this reprint and the addition of specific provisions regarding testing. We do understand the intent and importance of the bill overall, and we again thank the sponsor for her willingness to have conversations with us. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment today.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrow. Broadcasting, next caller, please.
There are no more callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. Senator Neal, would you like to give any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would, because I did work with stakeholders, and the amendment, which was done on March 31st, 2021, actually, my understanding, I had took care of the sheriff's issues with the county's amendment, NACO amendments that I adopted, and then also with Clark County's amendments. So I'm super surprised because the reprint and the work session document actually reflected those changes. And I had a phone call that said that they were okay with the bill. And so I'm super surprised. In addition, the issue with Metro and Mr. Callaway brought forward in saying that it's a cost burden and civil service employees. What I know to be true is that when I researched this bill and when I thought about this bill, the first thing I did was go to the employment testing agencies that were that had contracts with the city of Henderson, had contracts with the city of North Las Vegas, and they had like a smaller contract, but city of Henderson had a much larger, I guess, range of menu options that they had taken, and they had started the process. And so it cost them $10,000 a year to actually run this third-party testing. And $10,000 is actually very nominal for an agency that potentially has a multi-million-dollar budget. to be able to provide transparency. I understand the civil service comment that was made, but what I do know is that just because you're in civil service doesn't mean that you are not being discriminated against, doesn't mean that you are not being placed in a position where a glass ceiling is there. If we want to check the numbers of Metro, because I've been getting their reports on how many, their demographics, probably since I've been in this building since 2011. And I'm not throwing shade, and I've always worked with Mr. Calloway, but in terms of women who have been, who work for Metro, the numbers, and I'm going to pull it up, the numbers were, so commissioned police, so you had total commissioned officers were 3,097. The total number of women who were commissioned police officers were 323. They represented 10% of the actual makeup of the population, and this was the latest data that I get because I get quarterly information. When I looked up the numbers in regards to glass ceilings and when I was thinking about, just transparency, right? I don't think I'm asking for a lot. I'm asking for a third party to be a part of the process. And the third party should be a part of already some part of the process. But once you get higher up into ranks, I think that there is a little bit more, less opportunity for you to actually make higher rank when you are a certain sex or even a certain race. And all I'm asking for is, can I get my incorrect answers and know what I got wrong? So when I study to take the test again, I know what I got wrong so I don't make the same mistake. 2, I'm asking to get my score at the same exact time as my supervisor or my employer so that there is no discrepancy when a list comes out, so that I'm not kept in the dark. We all know equally at the same time. And 3rd, if there are some score tampering, that I actually have an opportunity to deal with that score tampering that may be going on, because now I find out that what I was marked as incorrect are truly correct answers, and I have an opportunity to discuss and debate those issues rather than being left in the dark and say, try next time, and not be able to fulfill the need to be able to promote. I've tackled this issue because I know there were many people who tested over and over and over again, have years of experience, and for some reason can't seem to make it over the test. And so this allows a third party, outside, independent, to then review what's happening. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you've had 20 years of experience and for some reason you can't seem to make it over a promotion test, something's wrong. Because it's not that you're lacking skill and experience or education. So something is preventing you from going further. And that could be, you could say it's personality conflict, but at the end of the day, I think that having a door to understand what did I get wrong with my 20 years of experience and knowledge is very appropriate. And being able to ask the question, at least have the position to challenge the answers so that they're not caught in a cycle of, number one, being depressed, trying to figure out, why can't I make it ahead? Why can't I seem to get my counterparts to believe that I actually have the capacity, and I keep studying and studying and studying and studying, and I can't seem to make it over. And so that is what those provisions are for me, Section 7 and 8, and what I was attempting to get at. And even if they say that the menu of options is $25,000 a year, $25,000 a year to have transparency in the testing practice, give me my incorrect answers, not correct, incorrect, and to make sure that everything is fair, I think is very nominal, very nominal. And so I just wanted to make that statement as my closing remarks, because I feel very strongly about glass ceilings, and I feel very strongly about transparency and having an opportunity for people to be able to have information to push back when they feel that they have the right to earn more money and to be able to go to a higher level within their employment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 327. Members, the last item on our agenda is public comment. Because there is a minute delay from our live feed to the internet feed, I will go through our public comment housekeeping to give people time to call in. I would like to remind those present and listening on the internet that public comment is an opportunity to discuss general matters that fall within the purview of this committee. If you direct your remarks to issues over which this committee has no oversight, I will ask you to redirect your remarks or terminate them. The public has also already been given time to support or oppose specific legislation. We open and close hearings on bills so that we establish a record of the public testimony on the bill. Therefore, public comment is not intended to be a continuation of a bill hearing. We do limit public comment testimony to 2 minutes. I ask that you be respectful of committee members and other witnesses and do not comment on testimony provided by other speakers and do not make personal attacks. You may always submit written remarks for inclusion in the meeting record. With that broadcasting, seeing no one here in Carson City wishing to give public comment, could we please check the telephone lines?
To take your place in public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you, broadcasting. Any comments from the members before we adjourn? Okay, thank you. With that, our next meeting will be held on Friday, April 30th. Members, as always, just please always look at the meeting time, as we might be starting at not our regularly scheduled time. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.